Right. So there's a kind of continuum here within the department, and I represent the extreme side of this, which is really the nefarious, deliberative use of some of these disease agents and pathogens. But we cooperate very heavily across the board, and you can see on the bottom, some of these cross over. That Venn diagram truly does cross over. So the Ebola response, for example, David and I were working that together along with Mr. Burnham's office. But that was heavily working with the interagency as well. So we were all working. Our office in particular, again, going back to the research question, we fund several $100 million just on medical countermeasures and diagnostics for diseases that could be used intentionally or as a weapon. So we do that largely, so I'm going to sort of answer some of your questions briefly in some of my comments, sort of the internal-external aspect. The internal is shown here quite a bit. If you go to the next slide. Oh, sorry. So we use the term a lot, whole of society response. You've heard whole of government, but we're really emphasizing whole of society. And one example of that is we work very closely with Health and Human Services. There's an entity called the Public Health Emergency Medical Countermeasures Enterprise, or FEMC. That's jointly governed. HHS has the lead, but we're a partner in that, along with other agencies, basically to divide up the territory and to decide who's going to take responsibility for which particular pathogens in this case. So some are clearly really more of a weapon concern, a biological threat agent, and not so much a public health threat. Others are clearly a public health threat and not so much a concern from a national security standpoint. But there's a large portion of that in the middle that we share. So Ebola was an example of one that we were frequently working all around town between HHS and all entities within HHS and then DoD. So that interaction is very important, and Vic made the comment about having that interaction. I'd also point to that. We work very closely with CDC. I had someone in my office from CDC throughout that whole time. We've now taken that billet and assigned that person. It's a CDC individual that we fund. They're now located at the Korean CDC because we have DoD has particular concerns about some things on the Korean Peninsula. And so that's a partnership there that made the most sense to do it that way. So things get very, very tightly wound up on all this. It's a good thing. Sometimes it's hard to pull it apart and see how the different pieces fit together, but it does function quite well. So as far as responsiveness, another area, I'll touch on this. I'll turn it over to Summer. But another area I'll just mention is we were trying to focus on rapid and responsive platforms. So this goes to another couple of your questions. Historically, our office is focused on one drug for one bug, you might think. That just hasn't worked, and it's really not feasible or realistic as we go to the future, as there's more emerging threats, more advanced and enhanced threats that are possible, as well as just advancing or emerging zoonotic diseases that someone could utilize as a threat agent. Again, those distinctions blur. We're focusing now on developing rapid production platforms versus the end drugs themselves. If we can have a platform that's at a warm start that has a lot of advanced bioprocessing capabilities, using a lot of synthetic biology concepts and others that we can insert into that. Things like a monoclonal antibody platform that's ready to go, that's not specifically targeted for a specific disease, but we could quickly take some of these technologies, insert that into it, and get that going. That's where our focus is going forward. FDA is working with us on that very well to make sure we can have everything, again, on a warm start so we can get it moving quickly. We've had some experience with this, again, through Ebola, with some of the antibodies and some of the other drugs that were developed for that, as well as the vaccines. Zika also has another opportunity that we've exercised. So with that, Summer Galloway is representing John Burnham's office, so I'll let her make some comments.
I'll keep my comments pretty brief, but I'll just go back to this this slide. So our office is primarily involved in the cooperative threat reduction program oversight that falls under the nuclear, chemical, and biological defense programs. Under the cooperative threat reduction program, we oversee several programs that with objectives to build chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear security, preparedness, and response capacity and capabilities. One of our primary implementers is through the Cooperative Biological Engagement Program. Some of the primary objectives of CBEP is to enhance partner countries' capacity in biosafety, biosecurity, and biosurveillance capabilities so that they're better able to respond when there is an outbreak or an outbreak of an infectious disease or some sort of radiological or chemical incident that poses a threat to public health. We are also heavily involved in trying to engage the scientific community within our partner countries so that they have more visibility on the international stage, which is a venue, I think, to provide them with more of a gateway to grant funding and steady streams of research funding to maintain their own scientific research programs in country. And just to point out, I think one of the things that we are most interested in with regard to this study are novel ways to sort of leverage global health engagement and the global health security agenda as a tool to advance our departmental objectives in a more collaborative and multi-sectoral manner. Specifically, we are most interested in ensuring that we are maximizing our resources globally and ensuring that the activities that we are implementing are targeted to sustainable capacity building, which is one of the primary motivating factors that we have when we engage with another country. Sustainability is at the forefront of our considerations, but also that the activities that we're doing are actually improving global stability. And we think central to achieving this is to encourage multi-sectoral coordination and cooperation of preparedness and response efforts. So as such, we're always looking for ways to sort of enhance and support our partner countries' ability to improve their national and international ability to respond to and prepare for the full spectrum of CBRN hazards to health. I think that that's all that I'll say, except to say that under the Global Health Security Agenda, we are primarily focused on, there are certain action packages within that program that we are primarily interested in, and just for informational purposes, it's largely biosecurity and biosafety, building national lab capacity, real-time biosurveillance, not just biosurveillance, real-time CBRN surveillance, in addition to response and preparedness activities. So I look forward to answering any questions, should you all have any. Thank you.
And let me just finish up for us and address a couple of questions with a few more pieces. This slide was just to, and I think it's already been talked about, our clear support for the Global Health Security Agenda. We did not get an additional appropriation, but are contributing in each one of the countries that are involved and have been, if you will, targeted for the Global Health Security Agenda efforts because of the link it has to our missions. And I've been working very closely with CDC and USAID on that. And then this has already been raised, but clearly, from our perspective, one of the areas that is a growing area, particularly with the success that we've had with infectious diseases and others, is the issue of trauma and injury. We now know, here in the United States, it is the leading cause of death below the age of 48, and around the world, it clearly exceeds malaria, TB, and HIV/AIDS on an annual basis. And so working in that area would be very valuable. Relative to your questions, I think we had originally assumed that this would be primarily externally oriented, but I think we clearly recognize that all of that work is also very applicable here in the United States, but also protective to the United States. And so both work. For the improved responsiveness and efficiency, Ariel had mentioned flexibility in budgets, and we clearly have plenty of those issues and restrictions across the DoD funding lines. Also, I think we need to clearly continue to invest in research and development. It's a critical part of our global health investment, as was pointed out by Roger. And as far as we have a very, I think, effective national response plan, but I think the whole community has recognized the importance of ultimately developing an international response framework and plan. And I know WHO and the United Nations is working this issue, but clearly we continually run into much more complicated than a national response plan, but would really help with responsiveness and efficiency. And then factors that will shape, I just noted clearly we would look to increasing partnerships in this world. Clearly, emerging infectious diseases, I think, will continue, as has already been noted, will continue to pop up, and we need to have the preparedness to be able to deal with that. And again, the need for continued investment in this space from a research and development point of view. But thank you for the opportunity, and we look forward to questions. Anything else from you, Chris?
If I may, I just finished my thought on the responsiveness. I told the first part of that story, didn't finish it. The only way that's going to work, that's sort of the responsive platform, is we're doing that in concert with everyone sitting at this end of the table. So, and a lot of this is in joint governance. So when the HHS has 4 of the facilities that are dedicated for these platforms. We have 1, but we jointly govern those 5 facilities, and we have representatives from everyone here on that governing entity. That seems to be working. I think we're open to see if there's more efficient ways of doing that. I mentioned the FEMC. There's BARDA, which again is a interagency governance function. It's the Biomedical Advanced R&D Authority. Again, all of us that are participating in that. So there are a number of functions, and we can get you more information about each of those, and could put you in touch with some of the leads of those particular entities. But I think that, we think it's responsive. It's good, but it could certainly be better. So we welcome any input on that.
And then we also have a quarterly meeting in the interagency between the ASDs of state, USAID, DOD, and what am I missing? HHS.